Good morning is another fresh edition of your Breakfast Show Leadership Television inside Nigeria. Today is a midweek edition of the show, June 11, 2025. And my name is Winifred Gobo, your host on the program. Today we are looking at newspaper review, what the papers are saying, including Nigeria's most influential leadership. Let's go there. Leadership's leading story today is on Democracy Day. Of course, June 12th has been marked as Democracy Day. And leadership says politicians are the problem of Nigeria, coming from the pan-social cultural organizations in Nigeria. ACF, that is Arewa Consultative Forum, Afenifere, Middle Belt Forum, and Ohanaeze. The story runs on page 4 of Leadership. Democracy at 26. Nigeria's democracy will be 26 years old tomorrow, June 12, which has been dedicated for commemoration of that day. And today's leading story says politicians are the problem of Nigeria, coming from all the pan social cultural organizations in Nigeria. The Arewa Consultative Forum, the Afenifere, Middle Belt Forum, and Ohanaeze. The story runs on page 4 of Leadership newspaper. I just want us to take some excerpts from that leading story. It says, as Nigeria marks 26 years of uninterrupted democratic rule, regional groups have declared that politicians are the problem of the country, not the system of government. In their different comments marking the activities of Nigeria's June 12 democracy, the regional body said that unless the politicians abandon the prioritization of personal interest, the masses will not feel the needed dividend of democracy. In the opinion of the APES Northern Social Cultural Organization, Arewa Consultative Forum ACF, politicians can sabotage any system of government in Nigeria unless they subdue their personal interest and work for the interest of Nigerians. ACF accused the politicians of not allowing Nigeria's government system to work. Afenifere says democracy is still better for Nigeria despite inherent lapses. Speaking on behalf of Afenifere, the National Publicity Secretary of the Pan-Yoruba Social Political Organization, Comrade Jari Ajayi, said that democracy is still Nigeria's best form of government, notwithstanding its perceived shortcomings. Meanwhile, Ohanaeze insists on restructuring as way forward. For his part, the APES Igbo Social Cultural Organization, Ohanaeze Igbo, has insisted on restructuring Nigeria as the way for the country to make progress. He stated that restructuring will allow the different regions to control their resources and develop at their own pace. The Middle Belt Forum says lives have not been improved significantly. Speaking on the same matter, the Middle Belt Forum, MBF, in a statement issued to leadership on its assessment of democracy in Nigeria, stated that 26 years of democratic governance had not significantly improved the lives of ordinary Nigerians. According to MBF, while elections are regularly held under contentious atmospheres, the democratic experience has largely failed to deliver good governance to the electorate. Democracy is better than military rule, says Ohanaeze Youth President. Conversely, however, a youth group, Ohanaeze Youth Council, has declared that democracy as a system of government has been good to Nigeria. The group's national president, Mazi Oku Nambwike, was assessing 26 years of unbroken democracy in Nigeria and insisted that the nation's democratic experience so far has been better than the military regime. He urged Nigerians to be patient with their leaders, adding that Rome was not built in a day. We just took some excerpts from that leading story on today's leadership in commemoration of Democracy Day at 26, which is going to be celebrated tomorrow. And of course, we took excerpts from all the social, cultural, and political organizations in Nigeria, talking about the Arewa Consultative Forum, the Afenifere, the Middle Belt Forum, and the Indigo Ohanaeze. So it's on that note we move from that leading cover on leadership today to page 3 of the paper, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on World Environment Day, Nigeria's battle against the tide. World Environment Day, Nigeria's battle against the tide. Let's take some snippets. Of course, World Environment Day was celebrated June 8th. That was last week. And Leadership's editorial is in commemoration of World Environment Day. And it says this year's commemoration of World Environment Day could not have come at a more critical moment for Nigeria, given the scale of environmental devastation the country continues to experience. The theme for 2025 big plastic pollution is particularly resonant. Plastic waste has permeated nearly every aspect of life, contaminating our water, food, and even our bodies. From oceans to farmland cities to rural areas, the menace of plastic pollution is now a global environmental emergency. In his commemorative address, Minister of Environment Balarabe Abbas Lawal emphasized the urgent need for action, citing the destructive impact of plastic waste on both ecosystems and human health. He stressed the need to tackle climate change in tandem with other pressing challenges, including rapid population growth, deepening poverty, and persistent security threats. We move towards the conclusion, of course, of today's stand, which is our stand. Let's see what leadership stand is. In the legislative arm, no, as a newspaper, we strongly agree Nigerians cannot afford to remain on the sidelines of this global struggle. This year's World Environment Day must mark a turning point, not just in rhetoric, but in policy, enforcement, and the national culture of environmental stewardship. Today's stand on leadership newspaper, World Environmental Day or World Environment Day, Nigeria's battle against the tide. From our stand, we move to the back page of the paper where we have Wednesday column with Olufunke Barowa. Today she's writing on Ojude Oba, an enduring legacy of history, culture, and heritage. Today's column on the back page of leadership, Wednesday column with Olufunke Barowa. Let's take quote from that Ojude Oba, an enduring legacy of history, culture, and heritage. In many societies today, the allure of global pop culture has eroded indigenous traditions. Every year on the third day after Ide Kabi, the ancient town of Ijebu-Ode in Ogun State, southwest Nigeria, transforms into a vibrant cultural stage for the Ojude Oba Festival, a spectacular convergence of tradition, religion, and royalty that celebrates Yoruba identity and communal pride. The first paragraph from the Wednesday column with Olufunke Barowa, Ojude Oba, an enduring legacy of history, culture, and heritage. Before we leave the back page of leadership this Wednesday, we must not fail to visit Ghana Must Go, and Ghana Must Go. Peter B is making the news. It says Tinubu orders orchestrating Labour Party crisis. And of course, guess what? Ghana Must Go replied. It's so funny. He said, "Yes, daddy." That irony is not lost on every Nigerian, given what happened or transpired during the electioneering period in Nigeria, where leakages, of course, from Peter Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate in 2023 presidential election, was alleged to have called a religious leader in Nigeria and replied, "Yes, daddy." Well, it's on that note we conclude today's review of Leadership newspaper. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership for continuation of these stories. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup this Wednesday, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard is on Wike and PDP's crisis. It says 2027 PDP leaders divided over Wike's proposition for Southern presidency. Leading story today on Vanguard is a story that is about the masthead, just like Leadership. Of course, they'll be having wraparound on their cover as their cover. Meanwhile, atop the masthead of Vanguard, we have 2027 PDP leaders divided over Wike's proposition for Southern presidency. Party risks becoming a carcass, coming from Fayose, past governor of Ekiti State. Will respond appropriately, PDP says. Leading story 2027 PDP leaders divided over Wike's proposition for Southern presidency. Another leading story on today's Vanguard newspaper: don't listen to busybodies, bystanders. Tinubu counsels Wike. The story continues on page 9 of Vanguard. Of course, the international center was International Conference Center was commissioned yesterday by President Bola Tinubu, and in the course of that, Tinubu Councils Wike don't listen to busybodies, bystanders. Federal government's plan for fresh $5 billion oil-backed loan hampered by low price. It's a report that is coming from Reuters, and it's that same leading story that is gracing the cover of this day newspaper this Wednesday. Federal government's plan for fresh $5 billion oil-backed loan hampered by low price. Report coming from Reuters. The story continues on page 19 of Vanguard. Is on that note, we conclude review of front headline stories on Vanguard newspaper this Wednesday. Don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard for continuation of these headline stories. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Daily Sun. Daily Sun is still on. Before we do Daily Sun, we move ahead to Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune says Wike renames ICC after Tinubu is a fallout of yesterday's commissioning of the renovated, refurbished International Conference Center in Abuja. And during the commissioning, Wike, the FCT minister, renamed ICC after Tinubu, and causing response to that. Tinubu says, don't pay attention to busybodies, President's FCT minister. Same leading story on Vanguard newspaper. Says usage of facility not free. Still on Nigerian Tribune, SEC orders public companies to release old dividends. ASU declares no pay, no work, any month salary is delayed. The story continues on page 3 of Nigerian Tribune. And of course, is on that note we conclude review of front headline stories on Nigerian Tribune this Wednesday, June 11, 2025. Don't forget to log into the website of Nigerian Tribune for continuation of those headline stories. We'll move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Daily Sun. Daily Sun says Fubara will be impeached even if he defers to APC, coming from Okocha, Rivers Chair. Ijo used urge president to reinstate governor lawmakers. Leading story today on Daily Sun, Fubara will be impeached even if he defers to APC, Okocha, Rivers Chair. Ijo used urge president to reinstate governor lawmakers. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, other stories gracing the cover are beside the masthead. Tinubu comments Wike urges him to ignore busybodies. As minister renames ICC order after president. As minister renames ICC after president. The story runs on page 26 of Daily Sun. Beneath that, June 12, Senate moves to make presidential address to NAS mandatory. Senate moves to make presidential address to National Assembly mandatory. That is for every June 12 celebration. Lastly, beside the masthead of Daily Sun, Nigeria to lose $10 million from World Bank credit over delays compliance issues. The story continues on page 2 of Daily Sun. Is on that note we conclude review of front headline stories on Daily Sun newspaper this Wednesday. Don't forget to log into the masthead of to the website of Daily Sun for continuation of those headline stories. We move ahead to the next paper on our lineup, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says 2027 computer-based test targets. Less than 30% public schools have computer labs, ICT savvy pupils. Leading story on today's The Guardian newspaper, Wednesday, June 11, 2025. 2027 computer-based test target. Less than 30% public schools have computer labs, ICT savvy pupils. Let's see the illustration beneath that leading story. It says 65% of secondary schools in the country lack functional libraries, and 90% do not have computer laboratories. 7% Nigerians between 15 and 24 have IT skills. 7% Nigerians between 15 and 24 have IT skills. We have 28.75% of senior secondary school students have basic computer proficiency. In other words, we only have 28.75% of senior secondary school students who have basic computer proficiency, while about 72% of educators lack digital training. Illustration beneath today's leading story on The Guardian. 2027 computer-based test targets. Less than 30% public schools have computer labs, ICT savvy pupils. And just beneath that, we have 2027 CBT deadline. In other words, federal government has given 2027 as a deadline for CBT, that is computer-based test target. In other words, all schools, all students should be computer compliant by 2027 and ready to be taking all tests through computer. It says 2020 is overly ambitious, says stakeholders. So that says 2027 CBT deadline is overly ambitious. Last UBEC census showed that 89% of private urban schools teach computer studies compared to just 12% of public rural schools. Many homes spend more on food and necessities than on gadgets. Leading story today on The Guardian. These are illustrations beneath that leading story. That 2027 deadline, CBT deadline, is overly ambitious, stakeholders say. And that last UBEC census showed that 89% of private urban schools teach computer studies compared to just 12% of public rural schools. And that many homes spend more on food and necessities than on gadgets. Illustrations, today illustrations beneath that leading story. We move ahead to other stories gracing the cover of the Guardian newspaper this Wednesday, and still on the ICC commissioning yesterday. Ignore busybodies, bystanders, Tinubu tells Wiki at reopening of center. The story continues on page 29 of the Guardian. Knox stray Wiki stakeholders meeting as PDP crisis deepens. Knox stray Wiki stakeholders meeting as PDP crisis deepens. June 12, Lamido urges Tinubu to immortalize Humphrey Nwosu. Plateau, 58 killed, 31 injured, 15,000 displaced in 6 weeks. The story runs on page 29 of the Guardian. Plateau, 58 killed, 31 injured, 15,000 displaced in 6 weeks. World Bank bullish on Nigerian economy, marks up growth forecast to 3.6% as a good positive note for Nigeria's economy. World Bank bullish on Nigerian economy, marks up growth forecast to 3.6%. Power outage plunges Adamawa, Borno, Taraba, Yobe in darkness. The story continues on page 5 of the Guardian. Power outage plunges Adamawa, Borno, Taraba, Yobe in darkness. That takes us to the stories just beneath the masthead of the Guardian. Peter Obi declares days of electoral impunity over. The story continues on page 3 of the Guardian. Senate to change presidential inauguration venue, mandates June 12 address, like we saw in the previous paper before it. 150,000 cases of babies born with sickle cell disease yearly in Nigeria. 150,000 cases of babies born with sickle cell disease yearly in Nigeria, meaning there's not much publicity or awareness on the sickle cell issue, considering the fact that babies are still being born with sickle cell disease. The story continues on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. It's on these notes we conclude review of front headline stories on the Guardian and our newspaper review today on Leadership Studio in the program Inside Nigeria. Well, tomorrow, Thursday, June 12th, is another edition of the program. It's another opportunity for a fresh edition of the program Inside Nigeria. Don't forget to join us for news on the hour on this station. My name is Winifred Gbebo. Thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have